In this video we will take a look at what is the Welkin Suite IDE, why it is pretty good option for your Salesforce development, and we will go through some of the most important and interesting features regarding the coded development using Apex, Visualforce and Lightning. So let's start. By the way, if you would like to get some more information about the declarative development functionality, about the Salesforce DX, you will be able to see the links to these videos in the description. Also, you will be able to see timestamps for different parts of this video, for the different features in the description as well. And today, now we will start with a short introduction and what is the Welkin Suite and how we have created it and what for we have created it. So, our team have created the Welkin Suite 5 years ago when we have started developing for Salesforce itself. At that moment, we realized that our initial team spent too much time fighting with the tools at that moment. The team was not empowered by the tools. They were fighting with them, trying to deal somehow with the tools and to get them working as they would like to. At that moment, we realized that we should provide them good tools, that they will spend their time working on Salesforce development rather than configuring their tools and fighting with the tools. This is how we have created the Welkin Suite, first of all as an internal project for our Salesforce team, and later it became publicly available IDE for everyone. And what is Welkin Suite in short? So it is an IDE, and the main goal of this IDE is to provide you as much functionality, as much different tools as you might need for your Salesforce development. You don't need to go to the browser, you don't need to switch between different applications, between different tabs even in the setup UI. You should be able to perform all of the most important actions directly in the IDE using only one tool without adapting to new interface, without trying to learn something new every time you need to do some changes in the setup menu, let's say. We achieve these goals by providing you a very flexible UI with a lot of different panels, with a lot of different functionality. For example, right now on my screen we have the Welkin Suite opened with a project. And here we can see the default development and layout with a bunch of panels. For example, we have the Solution Explorer panel, we have the Test Results panel, we have the Organizations Manager for Salesforce DX, we have special built-in panel for static analysis tool called PMD, we have panel for writing bundles, for administrative purposes, for code coverage, for debug logs, for working with scheduled jobs. We even have our built-in automated Git repository that doesn't require anything from your side to be covered up by that Git. We have special panel for static resources management, and I'd say that we have something about 10 more panels hidden in the view menu. So if you would like to, you can go through this menu and find some more panels that will help you in your tasks. But let's start going in more details and seeing what we have in the IDE. So let's start from the very important and one of the most important panels, Solution Explorer. In the Solution Explorer panel, you can see the contents of your project, all of the metadata that you have included from your organization to the project. In the Welkin Suite, projects are local copies of your metadata from your organization. This means that you won't need to wait for some request to a cloud to be performed before opening a file. Everything is stored locally. This means that each file is opened immediately without any delays, without any additional requests, and you don't need to wait anything. In terms of what can be included into the project, everything. Starting from our release in August 2018, we have included support for about 110 different metadata types in the IDE. So we support everything starting from Apex, Visualforce, Lightning, and up to object translations, custom settings, community portal settings, security settings, and all of the stuff. Of course, for all of these metadata types, we have pretty different editors and level of support. For example, for everything that is related to the coded environment, again, Apex, Visualforce, Lightning, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, we have great local editors with a lot of functionality. For some of the more generic metadata like objects, validation rules, workflows, we also have really great editors with a lot of added functionality that will help you work with them more productive. From another point of view, for most of the not so commonly used metadata like approval processes, applications, page layouts now, we have just regular XML editors where you can jump in, open any XML file and work with it as you'd work anywhere. So let's go deeper into the Apex editor, because it is one of the most important editors in Salesforce development, and take a look at what we have there. So I will search for one of my test files in the project and I will open it. What do we see here? First of all, you might notice that we have, of course, we have built-in syntax highlighting, and our team have built full stack of support for Apex. So we have built our own grammar, vexer, parser, all of the code completion functionality to provide you local and immediate syntax highlighting and code completion functionality. This means that if I will start, let's say, typing in something, I will get code completion hints and suggestions immediately without any delays. Let's say if you compare this to the developer console, you'll recognize that in the developer console it takes a bit longer because it sends requests to Salesforce, and then once it gets reply, it shows you the list of completions. In our case, everything is performed immediately, locally, and it even tracks all of your changes right immediately once you've done them. For example, if I will right now create a new variable of my customer subject type action plan, right here on the next line, this variable will be already available for me. It will be first in the list because we take care about the most recently used variables, properties, methods. So we'll suggest it as the first thing, and you will be able to enter it just with a couple keystrokes. As you might see here, our code completion functionality provides you the full support of everything taken from the standard Salesforce, let's say, Apex library. So all of the standard namespaces, classes, methods, properties, everything from Salesforce is available in the code completion. At the same time, we support and provide you code completion for all of your custom code. Let's say if you have any custom classes, custom triggers, if you have any managed packages with global classes and methods, we'll also show them in the code completion. And of course, as we are working in Salesforce, we are always working with data. So we will provide you the full support for all of your standard and customer subjects with all of their fields. And even here you can see all of the standard and custom fields, both relations and regular ones. And we are even showing you the list of methods inherited from the base subject class. So you'll have all of the details right here. If you go in more details of what is shown to you in the code completion, I selected right now the addError method, and you can see that we provide you the list of overloads available for this method. So I can clearly recognize that there are 4 overloads, all of them receiving different parameters, and in the code completion you can also see description for 2 of these overloads. So the Welkin Suite takes not only just signatures from Salesforce, but we are also providing you description taken from the Apex reference directly in the code completion. If I will start typing in parameters for this method, I will be able again to see all of the overloads and all of their methods. Descriptions will be also shown right here, and in case if we have description for any of the parameters, we will also provide you description for them directly in the code completion. So it's really a great time saver, so you don't need to waste your time on going to the Apex reference, trying to find out answers to common questions. You just might have forgotten something, and in this case you'll see this directly in the code completion. Another example that I wanted to show you, I'm a very big fan of the ApexDoc, and we would like to force everyone to use ApexDoc. No matter what IDE, what tool you use in your development, ApexDoc is really the greatest way to document your code and to share the knowledge about your project, about your code base with your teammates and with whoever will support your project afterwards. So let's say I have here a method with a couple parameters, with something return type, and I can just right click on it, select generate ApexDoc for current context, or I can use the Ctrl+Shift+D hotkey. Once I click this, the Welkin Suite will analyze parameters, return type, it will generate me a template for ApexDoc. In this template now I just need to enter meaningful information, so I don't need to remember how ApexDoc is created, what are the attributes here, I just need to fill in the important information, like I'm doing right now. Once I've done with this documentation, in my case it's not very meaningful, but I've done my best. Now, with this ApexDoc documentation, if I will try to reference this method in my code, in the code completion I will see description taken directly from the ApexDoc. If I will hit enter and you will start typing in parameters, you'll also see description for each of the parameters once I will enter the parameters. So 1, 2, 3, hello world. Here you are. In this way, you can just get rid of any external documentation. You don't need to maintain any Google documents or wiki pages to document your code. You can just properly document it nicely with ApexDoc inside of the code, and then it will be much easier for you to onboard new people to your projects or to just jump in and edit these files in a month, in half a year, even in a week. It will be much easier to do this. Okay, we're done with it. So let's I will just kill this because it will get exception here. So what do we else have in this editor? I want to show you a couple more things here. First of all, you might notice that the Welkin Suite detected that we are talking about test methods, either with a test method one or with isTest annotation, and it shows me results of the latest test run directly here in the editor. So I see that this test was last executed 15 minutes ago, and its result is succeeded. The same applies for all of the other test methods that the Welkin Suite detected in this class. At the same time, I can right-click on any of them and execute the low test method, the low test class, or just a test method directly from here. So if I will hit execute test method, it will appear in the test results panel, and I will show the real-time results right here. Once it's finished, I will be able to see this. This approach doesn't block me from using the Welkin Suite. I can move on and show you all of the other features, and the unit test will be executed. So unlike some other tools, I don't need to proceed to browser or open any other pages to just execute my unit test and see what is the result. By the way, it passed, so all is good. What else do we have here? Also, you can see on the left side that we have the class outline, the list of all of the members of this class. It might be constructors, methods, properties, fields, inner classes. All of these items will be shown in the list, and you can navigate to them just with a double click. It's a very handy feature, especially in large classes, because here you will see about 30 different members, I believe, and instead of scrolling here and there across the file, you'll be able just to jump to any of them with double click. If we talk a bit more about what features do we have here, so we have some of the basic functionality for the code assistance, I'd call it this way. So you can right click on any item and click find usages or use Shift F12 hotkey. It will find you all of the usages of this certain class, variable, parameter, whatever you've clicked on. So you can see where it was used and just double click to go directly to that place. As everything in Welkin Suite, you can relocate this panel, attach it here, and in the future this panel will be shown always here. Also, you can just right-click on any, again, variable member and select Go to Definition. Usually there is the F12 hotkey. In my case, it's just disabled right now. So once I've clicked to Go to Definition, it directly redirects me to the place where this variable or method was defined. Another cool feature that we have here, it's a feature to find and run related unit tests. For example, if you have done refactoring of some class or of some method, and you would like to see if what parts of your code base might be affected by this change. The easiest way for you to do this will be to right-click on the item. Again, it might be anything. It might be method, property, variable, parameter, or even class itself. And find an option Run Tests related to this class. Once you hit this button, it will take some time, starting from 10-20 seconds, maybe to a minute, depending on the size of your project, when the Welkin Suite will scan the whole your project, find out all of the references to this class, or to its methods, or to its properties, and it will find out in what unit tests this class, this item was somehow referenced. So for classes it takes longer because we will analyze all of the methods that are available in the class. But as a result, you will see the list of unit tests that are using somehow this class. In my case, I have just 5 unit tests. OK, I will hit Run Tests, and all of them will be executed. It's a pretty fast way to just do a quick check if you've broken anything with your refactoring or with your recent changes. Again, I will just click Show All to see the results, and we see that local variables class is already succeeded, while method calls class is still in progress. I really don't care about the results right now, so I will just proceed to the other parts of the editor. And the next part will be Lightning. So let's open any Lightning component and see what we have here. Once you open any Lightning component or application, you will see our built-in editor. It's split into two parts. In the upper part of the editor, you will see the live preview of your Lightning application or component, and in the lower part of the screen, you will see the editor with all of the items from the bundle. Let's first of all stop on the previewer to see what happens here. In the previewer, first of all, you can notice that we have opened component, and Salesforce itself doesn't allow us to preview components directly. But in the Welkin Suite, we have provided you a way to preview components. You can select what application or custom URL should be used to preview this component. In my case, I have a dummy application that just has this component embedded into instances, so I'm using this application for previewing this component. At the same time, if your application expects parameters, I believe in most cases it really expects some parameters, at least IDs, maybe actions, maybe something else. You can also type in these parameters in this input, and the Welkin Suite will remember these parameters and it will use them forever until you change them. So you've noticed that I've just opened this component, and the Welkin Suite realizes that it needs to open this application with these parameters, and it shows me the previewer of this application with these parameters. In the editor itself, what do we have here? So for the markup part in the component, in the documentation, in the design, it is a markup editor that knows everything about your regular HTML tags that you can use in the editor. It also provides you full information about the tags that are available for you from the Aura framework. For example, I can proceed somewhere here to Aura attribute, and as you might see, there is not so much documentation here because it is not 100% complete. But for about 60–70% of different tags, we provide you documentation taken from the HTML documentation or from the Aura reference as well. If I start entering attributes for a tag, the Welkin Suite will also provide me the full list of attributes which are allowed for this tag. Again, here we will try as much as possible to provide you all of the documentation from Aura reference, including description, default values, if the attribute is required or no. In this case, I don't need to remember everything that is available for this tag. I just can go through these 6 attributes and decide if I need any of them in my certain case. Some of the other interesting things that we have in the markup editor is that if you would like to reference to any method from your JavaScript controller in your markup, if you're using the c.macro, let's say it this way, the Welkin Suite will recognize this attempt, and it will provide you in the code completion with the list of all the JavaScript methods available for you from the controller. In the same way, we are handling references to local attributes from your component or application. So if you're using the Welkin Suite will provide you the list of all attributes available here. We will take description taken from the description attribute, and all of the information from attribute will be shown here. So I see that third attribute, it's string, degree of progress to show, it's auto-calculated, viewed and used internally. Okie dokie, let's use it. So this is in general about the markup editor. If you speak about the JavaScript editor that is available for us in the controller, render, helper parts, it's regular JavaScript editor that knows everything about regular JavaScript. It provides you the code completion, syntax highlighting, and as well it knows about the Aura framework, so all of the items from Aura framework will be available for you in the code completion as well. The last part in this editor is CSS editor that is available in the style. What's cool here is that right now in the CSS editor, in the Windows version, we are using the built-in CSS editor taken from the Visual Studio itself. So it's really incredible editor. It knows everything about the CSS. It provides you the full code completion for everything in your CSS. Let's try and change something. Let's, for example, change the color of this bar. So it even has, as you might see, the built-in color picker. It's not so handy in the real development, but for demonstration purposes, it's pretty cool thing. So I've changed this color. I hope I've changed this color from green to kind of pink. I will save my changes, and I will hit F5 to deploy all of my changes. So you might see that we are deploying a lot of files. Yep, I need to reopen design, our doc, render. I've deployed a lot of files, like everything from the Lightning page, as well as method calls class, because I have made some changes for it. Now it doesn't look like I've updated this. Let me try doing this once more. Let it be this pink color. And let's try to deploy it once more. Maybe I've deployed something wrong. Okay, it's something not good here, and maybe the reason is that I'm changing not the right thing. Let me change this value and to be pink. I believe it's called green by purpose. So let's change this green to pink and deploy my changes again. Yay, finally. So as you might see, once I've deployed my changes to the lighting component, the previewer have refreshed immediately, and I can see my changes directly here in the previewer. Also, you can notice that our deployment is incredibly fast, so it took only 1.5 seconds to deploy my lighting component, and it took another half a second to refresh the preview in the previewer. So this is really like a pretty small thing, but it allows you to save some of your time. Instead of switching from the application to browser, you just do everything right here. From another point of view, if you don't need a previewer, you might just hide it using this button. And the Welkin Suite will also remember your changes. So I will save it. The Welkin Suite will remember your changes, your approach, and it won't show you previewer anymore. In the future, if you need this, again, it's up to you, and you can get back the previewer and see it for the certain component or application. So that was about the writing editor, and let's move on to the Visualforce Editor because it is very, very similar to what we've seen here. Once you open any Visualforce page, you'll see the same split editor, while in the upper part of the screen there will be preview of your Visualforce page, and in the lower part of the screen there will be editor with the markup of the page. Here we have the same, almost the same approach as for Lightning, so you can enter parameters. Let's say if your page expects any IDs, again actions, you can type them right here in the parameters. From another point of view, you can use a custom URL. Let's say your Visualforce page is a part of public Force.com site, and you would like to see how this page looks on that public Force.com site. You can do this by just entering custom URL, and that custom URL will lead to that Force.com site. In my case, it's very straightforward. It's just a Visualforce page without any parameters at all. In the editor itself, what do we have? So we have almost the same code completion functionality as you might expect from the markup editor. It again shows you everything taken from the HTML, everything available to you from the Visualforce functionality. It also shows you all of the text available for Visualforce, and for each of the texts, again, we are showing you all of the attributes which are allowed to you by Salesforce in each certain tag. In addition to this, we are also have some more things here. Let's say inside of the script tag, we are providing you the full code completion and full syntax highlighting for JavaScript. So let's say I can type in and get element but ID, something style display. Here we are, just in the same way as it was on the previous line, but I'll just remove this part. We also provide here the code completion for inline CSS. For example, I have here some H3 tag, and I will just add here a style tag. So display, no. Is it somewhere displayed? No. Okay, so nothing won't change. So I can modify any changes, and the code completion will also provide me the full information about CSS tags and values available for here. And I can just do a very interesting thing. For example, I will just rename the title. So title let it be step 0. I will again hit F5 to deploy my changes, and once the changes will be deployed, the previewer will again refresh immediately to show me the changes that I've made. Again, it took a bit more because I've deployed both Apex class and Visualforce page, and it took 4.5 seconds to deploy the changes to Salesforce and show me the new preview with step 0. So that was about the Visualforce Editor, and now let's switch to one of my most favorite parts in the Salesforce development: unit testing, debugging, troubleshooting. So in the test results panel, as I've already mentioned to you, you can see your previous test results, all of their details right here. You can expand them. For example, for all of the failed test methods, you can select them. You'll see the basic details taken from Salesforce, like message and stack trace will be available for you right here. In addition to this, you can just click the open log button, and it will immediately download you the log file and show you it in our editor. You can very easily notice that there is a lot of exceptions here, like here, 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 and lots of them right here. So let's take a look at what we have in this Debug Logs viewer, and I will then get back to the test results panel and highlight you some of the cool features that we have there. So in the Debug Logs viewer, in the upper part we have the hierarchy-like code stack view of the execution flow, so you can very easily see all of the methods, classes, other handlers that were executed by during this execution flow, and it's very handy in the complex environments when you have lots of nesting, lots of complex calls. And in this case, you can just double click on any line and you'll get navigated to it in the text viewer. So you just take a look in the call stack, find whatever you need interesting, select it, and you'll get to that line in the regular text viewer. Once you don't need this part, you can just hide it, so you'll see more logs on an inch of your display. In the text viewer, we have different colors highlighting for different types of events. As you might see, we have some of the standard ones in yellow or white. We have exceptions pretty obviously in red. We also have here user debug messages. Now I don't have user debug messages here, so it's I should have something. So user debugs are shown in green, and in this way it is much easier for you to go through this debug log and see what happened here. You can also click the filter button and select manually what types of log entries will be shown in this log file for you right now. In my case, I'm absolutely okay with everything shown here. The most favorite my feature in the debug logs viewer, I'll show it in a minute. So let's get back first to the test results panel. As you might see here, I have a couple of test executions, and some of them are succeeded, some of them were failed. We have some very small time savers built in the test results panel. For example, in this test run, I've had 31 test classes executed with only 15 of them failing. So just to save a minute of my time, I can right click on this test run and rerun only failed classes. This will start a new test job and I will see its results in real time. In this case, I don't need to execute the whole lot of unit tests, I just rerun whatever have failed. In the same way, I can proceed with each class. So let's say I have action plan templates class, I have 16 methods there and only one of them is failing. So I just right click on this test class and select rerun only failed. This will add one more job that was completed within a couple of seconds, and I already immediately see that this test method is failing. Of course, if you would like to execute everything, you can just click on the button Run Tests. You can select manually what exactly should be executed. You can select by methods from different test classes. You can select just everything if you need to rerun everything. You can switch to the Test Suites tab and you can execute your predefined test suites, or you can open the Test Suites Manager and modify your test suites to reflect your latest changes. Let's say in integration tests, I would like to edit some more unit tests that I have. Here we are, my new test suite was updated and I can just run it from here. But okay, not for now. So let me show you then one of my really favorite things in the debug logs viewer. So I've opened one of my failed tests logs here, and I will go directly to that exception that was thrown. Now I can right click on any line in the debug log and select the go to source option. It will lead me directly to that line in the code where I had this exception. So I don't need to reread this log file to try to understand what have happened there, trying to calculate lines, finding these files. I just right click and go to source, and I'm here. I had an exception right here. And what I can do here, I can if I have any issues with my unit tests, or if I have any issues with the business logic, and if I would like to debug it and see what happens there, I can always right click on any unit test and select an option to debug unit test. If I will click the debug unit test option, the Welkin Suite will set up the proper debug log levels. It will start a new test run, as you can see here. Once the test run will succeed or fail, just once it finishes, the Welkin Suite will download debug log files and analyze them to provide you a debug-like experience. So it's not a literally real-time debugging where you can interrupt your execution flow, you can just break it. Now it's retrospective debugging, so everything have already happened, succeeded or failed, like no matter for us. And you can go step by step through the execution flow to see what exactly have happened and what was the results of each of the steps. So we are already in the debug mode right now, and let's see what we have here. So as in any normal debug mode in any normal development platform, you can see here the current your execution statement that will be executed. You have buttons to control the execution flow, to step into, step over, step out, and step back. We also have a bunch of panels in the lower part of the screen. Let me rearrange them. So we have locals panel, which will show me my local variables and their values. We have the call stack panel, which shows me the call stack. And we have two more interesting panels hidden. So we have governor limits panel. I will just bring it here. That shows me my governor limits, their usage, and how they've been changed with each step. And we also have the debug logs panel. I will put it instead of the call stack. And the debug logs panel will show me debug logs for each line that was executed. So not the whole file, because it is almost impossible to read huge debug logs, but it will show me only most recent debug log entries that were generated. So let's try to debug and see what happens. I'm going step by step. You can see that here we are. We have our first variable appeared here. Now we have the first variable of action plan variable again as well now because it was not initialized. Now we will have the dummy class instance object. Yep, here we are. We have object variable of dummy class with some of its properties. We also have a new static variable static property available from my dummy class because it is right now in the scope of visibility. We see that heap size is being changed with each step because we are doing something with the call stack. With heap, we are defining new variables and working with them. And in the debug logs panel, I see that really with each step, some of the debug entries are generated. And also, if you are still using, and I believe most of us are still using that good old approach of having system.debugs in most interesting parts of your code base to debug interesting values, some checkpoints or something like that, it will be very easy for you to combine the Welkin Suite debugger with the system.debugs because you will see all of the system.debugs right here. You won't miss them. You can even just go to filter, select nothing, and see only your user debugs entries. In this way, for each of the steps, you will see only what you have proposedly outputted to this log file. Also, as you might see, I have already set here a couple of breakpoints. Let me remove this breakpoint and put a breakpoint here. So I can skip not interesting parts of the code inside of the debugger and jump directly to the interesting lines for me. So I see that something have happened. I don't care too much. I just want to step into this method call. So I will step into, and as you might see, I am in the same class in another just method. I have two parameters, number and text, and both of them were passed here. I see their values. In this way, I can really understand what happens, what branches of code were executed, and what variables were used for each of the, let's say, statements that was executed in my code base. So in this way, I can go through my execution flow, see what happens everywhere, and understand how my code works or why it doesn't work the way I expect to. In my case, the unit test is green, so everything is okay. I won't need to debug it, so I just stop the debugging process. This was the first way on how you can start the debug log, the retrospective debugger. The second approach is to open a debug logs panel, find your debug logs that you would like to get, double click on it to open it, right click and start debugging. In this way, the Welkin Suite won't execute anything, it will just get the debug log and provide the retrospective debugging of what have happened in the debug log. So in my case, right now it will be the same of what we've seen a minute ago. But before you use this approach, you need to configure your debug log levels. So you can select your project in the debug logs panel, select configure debug log levels. You can manually set up everything as you'd wish, or you can use set retrospective debugger log levels. So we will pre-fill here the values that we need for the debugger. You just click OK, and the ID will set these log levels in your environment. Now, for example, you can go to a Visualforce page, you can open any Lightning component or page, or you can hit any trigger to get some debug logs generated. Then you will open that log and start debugging to understand what have happened in that execution flow. And as we were talking about unit tests, let me just finalize this part and show you the code coverage panel. So in the code coverage panel, we are showing you the full code coverage information about your organization. So you see here all of your Apex classes and triggers with code coverage values for each of them. You can filter out by any of the columns, you can sort by any of the columns, you can double click on any of the files to get navigated to it. You can also enable show covering, so you will see information on what lines of code are covered with unit tests and what lines of code are not covered with unit tests directly in the editor. By default, we are showing you the aggregated value for all of the test methods that are somehow touching this class, but you can select any of the methods in this drop down. Let's say select this test method and see that it literally tests not so much of this class, or this somehow doesn't test anything at all. In this way you can very easily find out what parts of your class of your code needs to be covered by unit tests to increase code coverage and to increase the quality of code coverage. So you test all of the possible branches, all of the possible flows in your code base and make sure that it won't break somehow in a week or in a month. So let's remove the show covering. And a couple more things that I want to mention here, just to not overwhelm you with all of the different features, because we can talk about them for another hour for sure. I wanted to show you that in the Welkin Suite we provide you a very different way of working with SOQL queries compared to other tools. So in the Welkin Suite we allow you to create SOQL queries as separate files in the project. You see that I have here a SOQL query for demo, and once I open this SOQL query, what I will see? I see the SOQL editor on the left side, so it's just a regular editor for SOQL queries. On the right side I can see the Schema Explorer. So I can see the full list of objects. For each of the objects I can see the full list of fields, and I see checkboxes that some of these fields are already selected. So yeah, this checkboxes match. So for example, I can add here industry. And also I can in the same way go to child relationships and I can retrieve information about the child items. In my case, I already retrieved information about child cases and child contacts. So here they are. Instead of doing all of the stuff on my own, instead of entering all of the fields on my own, I can just do this with the checkboxes. Once I'm happy with the query, I can just execute it and see the results directly here in the editor. So I see all of the different fields that I've selected, and I see also here the child items. So I see here 3 child cases shown in the separate table under the button click, and also I can see 2 child contacts shown again in a separate table. So instead of looking at a plain JSON and trying to parse it on my own, I see everything in normal details. Also in the Welkin Suite we provide you a way to easily and quickly modify the data that you've seen in the SOQL query. For example, if I hover over any of the fields, I see that object type is account, field type is pick list, and field is newable, and it's editable. If I take a look at ID, the field is not updatable. So I can just double click on the name, change it from TVS to the Welkin Suite, change number of employees from 15 to 150. Why not? I'd like to. I can also modify dummy account and make its number of employees from blah 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 to match to 9. And the Welkin Suite highlights you changed values, so you can see all of them right here. Once I'm done with my changes, I can hit the upload changes button. And now, yep, now we see the exception, and it's not an exception, it's an error, because we have required field, demo field 3, it should be required. It is required on the object, but it is not a field in my case. So update have failed. I can try to set the original values, so discard these changes. Let's try to upload changes for the Welkin Suite. Yep. So for this record, update was successful. If I rerun the query right now, I will see that it was updated. And as I've made some changes to the query, I will just save it, and it will remain in the project for the future usage. Maybe I can share it with my teammates, maybe I will use it for the future, maybe I'm using it for debugging some of the issues or some of the different situations. So in this way you can just preserve your queries for the future and not waste your time on rebuilding them in the future again. So this was mostly it about development part. We also have some of the very great features like built-in static analysis tool, like called PMD. We have some more videos, so take a look at our channel and you'll see videos about PMD, how to use it and why it is so great in general to use PMD and increase your code quality. We have some other great features in the Welkin Suite, so just take a look on our channel, see our documentation, try it yourself, and if you have any questions, just always feel free to contact our team. We'll be happy to answer all of your questions. Thank you very much.